Washington's fourth spring practice is in the books.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He writes for Inside the Huskies of Fan Nation Sports Illustrated. I'm the site editor over with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. All right, Lars. So right off the bat, we're going to address the elephant in the room is really the only way to put it. Tybo Rogers, sophomore running back, was arrested and charged with 2 counts of rape on Friday. Today, as we're recording this on Tuesday evening, Jed Fisch said that he has been suspended indefinitely from all team activities. He's also officially been suspended by Washington's ICA, which is a standard policy when any sexual assault charges come against any athlete. And you know, we're not going to get too far into the weeds on this. We have a lot of fantastic colleagues who've also done some really great reporting on all this. But the one thing that we did want to make sure that we touched on in this is that the 2 accounts of this are from October and November of 2023, which both happened under the watch of Kalen DeBoer's coaching staff. And, you know, we were aware of some sort of situation that Ryan Grubb brought to light, saying he was working through some things off the field, you know, late November, just kind of around that. He didn't travel with the team for the Pac-12 championship game, but was allowed to play in both the Sugar Bowl and the national championship. And I mean, yeah, that's just kind of where we are right now.
Yeah. And I mean, like you said, there's nothing more that we're going to be able to add. It's just we're just going to let everything play itself out. You know, there's nothing more that we can acknowledge other than he wasn't at practice on Saturday, was again absent today once the news came out. So he was at the first 2 practices. But again, it's something that aside from this, even Jedd Fisch acknowledged after practice where what happened in the past, he doesn't have firsthand knowledge of, so he can't comment on it. And the rest is just going to have to be sorted out down the road.
Right. And we're like you said, we've got some very capable colleagues who are also doing just tremendous coverage of everything around just breaking news and everything in the Seattle area. Our good buddy Christian Capel over at On Montlake wrote a very detailed article about a lot of just kind of the allegations of what's been going on. So feel free to go check that out over at On Montlake. And yeah, it's just along the same lines. Another member of Washington's team, and this is Jedd Fisch was very clear that this is not in the same ballpark. It looks like Diesel Gordon has also just been away from the team, the redshirt freshman safety. And Jedd Fisch made it very clear that he was not involved in anything along these lines. But we should note that Diesel Gordon was also suspended in August of 2023, along with Tybo Rogers for a separate incident that, you know, we won't get into. It's very different, had nothing to do with, you know, the things that Rogers has been accused of. But with that being said, there's a whole lot of other things that we need to get into from practice. And Lars, I'm going to hand it off to you. Where do you want to start with this?
We got sleeveless Bill Belichick or cut off Bill Belichick. Like that to me.
Hold on. He was the sleeves were not cut off. That was the short sleeved hoodie.
But either way, it's still patented, no longer full arm Bill Belichick. But one thing again, kind of just the overarching theme of this is he's so engaged with this team. I mean, we're watching all 3 quarterbacks, and I say 3 because again, we're talking about the scholarship guys, right? Damon Williams, Darcy Davis, Will Rogers. But then he's also taking a look at the defense, right? So I think it's important to acknowledge he's helping the entire team. This isn't Bill Belichick just working with Steve Belichick, right? This is actually Bill Belichick helping out. And even Will Rogers kind of acknowledged it right after we got to talk to him in practice, where it's just, hey, this is just an invaluable resource that we can take advantage of. And I think, I don't know, it's kind of that Bill Belichick-esque where he's got that little bit of smile, but the rest of it is work. And I think you're kind of just starting to see that, where there were several plays today on both offense and defense where guys made plays. I mean, again, let's start right now with the agenda. Denzel Boston making a contested catch between 2 A1 starters and Cam Fabiculano and Ephesians Brysock. And by the way, from my view, about 10, 15, 20 rows up, it looked like he caught it one-handed and then just secured it in kind of with the second hand, but it almost just landed right in the breadbasket there, and he took a pretty decent lick, but held on to it. So one other note on that, Kevin Cummings very much will get on his receivers if something's not right. That's one other thing we learned from practice today.
So that you're absolutely right on the Denzel Boston thing. I don't think that was his best catch of the day because he went over Elijah Jackson in the end zone for the only offensive touchdown scored on the day and just took the ball away from him in just very impressive fashion where, you and I talking about him being just a big, tall, lanky receiver. And he showed off every bit of that in Tuesday's practice. But yeah, no, I really like your point about Bill Belichick. And that was something that I wanted to make sure that we talked about a lot because, not only as a Patriots fan, I know I get it. I'm going to talk about it every time that I possibly can. But one thing that was really cool about that was just because we knew this was going to happen, right? We knew he was going to be around the team in some facet. I know we talked about this on our Monday show as well, but we didn't know what it was going to look like. And, Jed Fisch had said, yeah, he's been in meetings, he's been talking to the players, and we saw him with a call sheet on Saturday. And then today he's just standing back there and, he's watching 7-on-7s and he saw something he didn't like from McEllisteen and just walks up to him and just says, and just starts coaching him up. That was really, really cool. And, it's something that you were talking about a little bit on the sidelines is how many other places are you going to be able to go in college football and not just obviously Bill Belichick, but have any kind of coach with that kind of resume, that kind of caliber that's just going to just be there watching practice. And of course, that's a testament to just how Jedd Fisch has put the staff together, but that's just such an amazing thing to see. And like I said, from my standpoint of all this and just, watching Bill Belichick for my entire life as a Patriots fan, it's still quite jarring to see, but also just really, really cool.
Right. And I think that was the other thing. When I first got out to practice, I told you, I was like, oh, Bill's still here. It's like, yeah, no, he's not just making these one-off appearances, right? He's not just coming for a coach's clinic and then cashing a check and saying what have you. He might be doing that with a couple other programs in Nebraska. But when it comes to Washington and his involvement, he truly is involved. This isn't just a publicity stunt. I think it's kind of worth repeating that just because when you hear the name Bill Belichick, right, somehow he's not coaching in the NFL, right? Again, we can understand why he's not coaching with the Patriots, but the fact that 31 other teams decided to not bring him in as their head coach, it's like, okay, why would you not use this valuable resource? I do kind of honestly think it's an intriguing point for Bill Belichick to go with a college system, knowing that, hey, some of these guys I could also be looking at 3, 4, 5 years down the road if I'm back in the NFL. So it's kind of good for him to stay up to date and not just, I don't know, what do you want to say, go work as a senior analyst with Tampa Bay or use some other NFL team and just kind of be an advisor or whatever. This does seem like a more natural fit. And I do think, obviously, as we touched on, having the relationship with his son, Steve, and just kind of that, Steve is now the one actually that has the job and Bill is kind of there as a bona fide, what the most senior of graduate assistants, if you will. And obviously he's not a graduate assistant, but again, the point being, he's not going to be on the headsets, right? He's not going to be involved in that capacity. But again, to your point, where I'm glad you actually mentioned that point about McEllisteen. Towards the end of practice, Mikel is literally calling out something on the sideline, saying, "Hey, this is what it's going to be. This is what it's going to be." Defense goes and makes a play. They don't, again, it's just a pass breakup. But again, it's seeing that, listening to it, and then actually showing that in the same practice, not just, "Oh wow, Bill Belichick, like, nice to meet you." It's like, no, these kids are also taking it in stride. They're not wowed by the Bill Belichick factor, right? Which again could be the case, right? 18 to 22-year-old kids. Wow, I've looked up to Bill Belichick my whole life. I could go geek out right now like some of us would. But instead, these guys are actually taking.
You can just say my name, man.
I was gonna say I didn't want to just single you out like that or call you out like that. But to your point, it's just good to see this all around. It's actually paying off, and I'm curious kind of how much into the fall is this same sort of thing going to be a case? Because again, he doesn't have to wear a headset to provide valuable things to the team Sunday or Monday through Thursday or Friday, right? Well, he doesn't have to be on the sideline. It's breaking down film, breaking down practice film, especially with the defensive backs, because we've said this on the show. They didn't get much coaching the past 2 years. So whether you have 2 coaches or 20 coaches helping those guys, I think nothing short of that will be helpful.
Lars, with that being said, let's get to some more of our takeaways. right after a message from our good friends over at FanDuel. It's playoff time in the NBA and in NHL. Baseball's in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. You can bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel is America's #1 sportsbook. And you know what, Lars? I'm gonna go away from my normal New England Boston agenda today, and I'm gonna give a baseball pick here because you were standing right next to me when I saw that Jackson Holiday got called up for the Orioles, the #1 prospect in baseball, the 19-year-old phenom. Super excited to watch him play. If you can put some FanDuel Rookie of the Year odds down on him in the American League, I would go ahead and do that sooner rather than later because he's going to be so much fun to watch on that team. So, Lars, another thing that I really wanted to talk about is something that, you and I have definitely had a lot of conversations about so far. It's the offensive line. And it's more just, we know that the additions are going to be made. So we kind of saw just why for the most part on Tuesday, where the defensive line looked really good. Looked the best we've seen so far, where we saw Zach Durfee have a really good day. We saw Maurice Himes get back there for a sack. We saw Jacob Lane get back in there for a couple of sacks because there was a lot of team stuff that was done on Tuesday. And the more of it that we saw, the more we saw from the defensive line. Javon Parker showed some nice pass rush and just some nice pass rush bursts on a couple of different reps there. And it was just really exciting to see the defensive line in full swing. And now, even like talking to Will Rogers and Damon Williams a little bit, they seem to understand that there are going to be some changes made along the offensive line by the end of spring. So we saw that in full effect, and Damon did get a couple snaps with the first team offense today, where I don't know if it's necessarily going to be like a quarterback competition. It's not something that, we're banking on with Will Rogers having just 1 year of college football left, but I'm really curious to see what those changes that are being made along the offensive line are, mainly because the defensive line had a really, really good day.
Right. And again, now we don't want to throw anybody under the bus. We don't want to disrespect anybody, right?
Let's be real. Yeah. It's a young offensive line.
Well, it's a young offensive line who also have some walk-ons, right? So again,
right.
No disrespect to walk-ons, right? We've seen many players, hold down spots as walk-ons. But again, this is not, to your point, the offensive line that's going to be rolling out in fall camp, aside from Drew Party and potentially one other player, right? We'll just say pick one other offensive lineman that's been making a good – because there have been some offensive linemen that have made some good strides today in this first four days of spring ball. But I will say I think there was also plenty more sacks that could have been had if it was actually live, right? And I think so when you look at it, okay, how much – again, we all know how Javon Parker is going to be good, right? But – it was nice to see Sebastian Valdez get a little bit of push. Zach Durfee, again, is just going to destroy people this fall. So, again, it's one of those where I think there was over a dozen throws, both between Damon and Will Rogers, where the sack had already occurred probably 3 or 4 seconds prior, and you're still completing the play. So it's one of those where it's like – but I think what we're kind of hitting at is no matter who the quarterback is, again, probably more likely than not Will Rogers, right? Until it's determined, until Jed Fisch says he is our starter, we'll just say presumed starter. But with that being said, no matter what happens, somebody's got to be able to back him up. And so I think that's why we're seeing Damon get those reps. And DeMarcius, again, has looked good, but I think there's still a little bit of a gap between Damon and DeMarcius in terms of decision-making, time, and just to get the ball out of the hand, because Damon, much smaller, but much quicker at getting the ball out, where I said to you inside the Dempsey on Saturday, that deep ball, that touch looks like Russell Wilson. But then you look at his intermediate throws, the 20, the 25-yarder, and the 15, they've got some real zip. Whereas Will Rogers, again, it's kind of there isn't a change-up speed, right? It's just that he's got the two-seamer down. It's just a matter of can that hold on strong enough throughout the rest of the season, which I think it will, because again, Jed Fisch knows how to tailor an offense to a certain type of quarterback, right? And I think we talked about this on the show where all three of these quarterbacks do something a little different. So you need to prepare all of them to start, but you know that the offense isn't going to be the same with all three of these guys under center. I think it's good that they're getting those reps in now, even with the bad offensive line, or not bad offensive line, but a younger, kind of offensive line that probably in a couple of years could be good, but one that you're not going to roll with in fall camp. I just want to clarify there.
No, I see where you're coming from, and I agree there. And I think it's nice to see because it seems like they're just really starting to ramp up now. Where the first week, as Jedd Fisch said, there was like a lot of teaching on the first day, and now that we've seen more from some of these guys, it seems like they're a little bit more comfortable, doing a little bit more just in terms of routes, in terms of concepts, in terms of some of the different things that they're doing, both in 1-on-1 drills, 7-on-7s, and in full team 11-on-11 drills. And I gotta say, I think it was the best day for Devon Williams we've seen so far, where he was making a lot of really nice throws in some of the 1-on-1s. He did get picked off, and I'll get into it because one guy who I really want to talk to, I might as well just do it now, is Jordan Shaw. Jordan Shaw, the transfer from Arizona by way of Indiana, had a really, really good day. He was very, very impressive, where he had a nice pick during just some of the 1-on-1 reps where he just stuck to Giles Jackson and did a fantastic job undercutting the route and picking off Devon Williams. It was that time. And then I believe it was Will Rogers the second time during 7-on-7s, but once again, just made a really nice just break on the ball, and honestly should have had a third off a tip, but it fell incomplete. He just had a really, really good day, and he's somebody where right now I don't think he's the starter in the nickel, but I think we're getting to that point where right now it looks like Devon Banks is still coming along slowly in some of the contact drills. And right now he's the guy who I have penciled in to start right there because he was just so impressive before the injury last year. And he's somebody that I'm really, really high on. And I think he's somebody who, as we saw last year, was ready to play himself into more playing time, but just wasn't able to stay healthy. And if he's able to do that this year, I like Devon in that role, but I have Jordan Shaw right behind him. And today was just a prime example as to why Jedd Fisch and especially John Richardson, cornerbacks coach, likes him so much.
Yeah, see, so I'm going to disagree with you for everything you just said, right? So say a line that's usually you say, because Jordan Shaw has, at least for the first 4 days of spring ball, right? Again, this could change, right? He could take a dip or whatever, but I have a hard time seeing that just with the way he plays and the style in which he plays that. I don't think you can't not have him be starter, but to your point about Devon Banks, that doesn't preclude Devon from coming back and making just as much of an impact during the fall and into the season. But I just think because of that injury history, because of the way that Jordan Shaw is able to get a little bit ahead of him because Devon is still working his way back, I think that little bit of gap will end up being what ends up having Jordan Shaw as the starter in the slot and Devon Banks, again, to your point, right behind it. This is not a massive gulf, right? The gulf between Damon and DeMarcy as a quarterback is nowhere near what it is with Jordan Shaw and Devon Banks. Those guys are basically 1A, 1B, but I think Jordan Shaw, because he's able to have that, basically not be held back, right? He's basically able to show all of these things that a healthy Devon could show, but I think you go into fall camp with Jordan Shaw as your penciled in nickel, and you just, if Devon outplays him in fall camp, so be it. But I think, at least at this point, I would just flip those two for all the reasons you just mentioned.
Oh yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. If whenever we do get a first depth chart and Jordan Shaw is on top, that again, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised in the slightest bit. He's super impressive. He's super fluid, a super nice mover. But I think that I'm just kind of leaning on the top end of what we've seen from Banks compared to, because again, yeah, I don't want to take anything away from Jordan Shaw. He had a fantastic day and has been really impressive, honestly, throughout all 4 practices. I really like that top end of what we've seen from Banks. And I think that there's still more that you can get out of him. And I just think his ceiling might be a little bit higher from what we've seen from both of them so far through their college careers is just kind of where I've gone with that. And it's fun because one of the things that Jed Fisch said after practice today is that, he expects the defense to win a lot of these drills, to dominate early on, and wants the defense to just kind of be a staple of this team. And he made that very clear by going out and hiring Steve Belichick. And there's so much talent on the defensive side of the ball. And, for a very long time, this has been a one-sided team where offense through the Kalen DeBoer era, Jimmy Lake, you can say it was the defense because that, especially in 21, that pass defense was so good. Obviously, Trent McDuffie, Kyler Gordon, and then for the majority of the Chris Peterson era, it was a defensive-minded team. The one year is very well-rounded was 2016. but they just weren't necessarily physical enough to hang with Alabama. So I think it's really interesting where with this coaching staff, plus this group of players, this could be the most well-rounded Washington team we've seen in a long time.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it will be. And I think to your point, I'm glad you mentioned the whole that's because again, Chris Peterson was an offensive minded coach who just happened to run into a buzzsaw of a defense with Pete Kwiatkowski for the first couple of years. And similar in that mold where you have a lot of good talent in that secondary. Now you actually add great coaching to that with the offensive. And the offense actually kind of is almost inverted where it's like you have some pieces on offense, but there's no wow factor, at least at this point, right? Where I'm sure there will be in the ground and pound with Jonah Coleman and all that. But the defense, there's so many more pieces over there that you kind of think about it. Carson Bruner, there's a number of guys which you can kind of look at on defense and say, I feel a little bit better giving the edge to the defense. But again, it's still pretty early overall. And I think, again, once you probably get into May with the portal additions and all that, then we get to get a better sense of how balanced this roster actually is.
So I agree. I will disagree on the one thing. I think we're starting to get to the wow factor, especially with Denzel Boston and everything we've seen from him. But by the time we get to the season, and like Jeremiah Hunter as well, because he's still working with the second team for the most part, but he's coming along so nicely. And I think he's just going to be such a major player in this offense, which can be really excited to see. And I have more I want to say about him, but we'll get to a break first. Right after a message from our good friends over at Game Time, because with killer last minute deals, all in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets, which is great for me because there's nothing, especially as a former baseball player myself, I love more than going to watch baseball. And, even though I know the Red Sox are painfully mediocre, the Mariners, we'll see what happens there. I'm very excited to spend a whole bunch of time down at T-Mobile Park this summer, just soaking in some baseball because that is just one of my favorite things. And I'm going to be using Game Time for all of that because they have so many fantastic deals like flash deals where you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event and last minute deals, which can save up to 60% off buying last minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. And with their lowest price guarantee, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you can find a lower price anywhere else. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. So, I want to keep talking about Jeremiah Hunter here because I had a lot of fun watching the one-on-ones today where the defense was certainly winning all the reps earlier on. And then the later on it went, the offense kind of started to tick up and tick up and tick up and tick up. And one of the biggest factors in all of that was Jeremiah Hunter, where he ran a slant route against Thaddeus Dixon that was just so quick and so smooth. And I was talking about this with our good buddy Alex Katzen over on the sidelines, where there have been a lot of quick concept passing. Whether that's an easy thing to install, whatever it might be, we've seen a whole lot of mesh, especially just some of those mesh routes with a couple of crossers over the middle. And if we're just going to see a whole lot of quick passing, because I feel like we saw some of that at Arizona with Jacob Cowing and Dorian Singer, especially where they just like to get the ball in those guys' hands and let them go to work and try to make a play after the catch. I feel like that'd be a really exciting way to just try to get the ball into Jeremiah Hunter's hands at times. And just, he's so big, he's so physical, he's so strong that I feel like that could end very, very well for this offense.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when you look at Will Rogers, where's he had the most success, where it's behind the line of scrimmage or kind of in that intermediate route, right? Where get the ball out quickly, let the skill players take care of it, just be a point guard. And even with Damon, right? Same sort of thing where he's able to get the ball out quickly. Again, he's probably can drive the ball downfield a little bit more. But I think the other point I'm kind of want to highlight this since you mentioned, just for clarity's sake, Jeremiah Hunter, more likely than not, is not going to be a 2 for Washington. Let's we don't even need to go down that road. But the reason for it is because when you're having Damon also come along and even DeMarcius, those guys need quality receivers, right? No disrespect to walk-ons, but it's like, hey, we kind of need a Giles or a Jalen or a Jeremiah Hunter to help out Damon because, again, these guys can make a lot happen, but we don't want Damon having to scramble for his life on every single play because yeah, he's showing his athleticism, but he's not showing what else he can do in the pocket. So that's just to be clear, when we say Jeremiah Hunter's been working with the twos, Denzel's been working with the ones with Will Rogers. It's almost like you can flip those two and it wouldn't make a difference because, again, it's building the relationship and chemistry with the quarterbacks. And so I think with Jeremiah, because, again, when we talk about the starting receivers, it's probably Denzel, Jeremiah, and then have your choice of the Z, right? Have your choice of Giles, have your choice of Keith Reynolds, who got some time with the ones. I will say.
Oh, I'm going to talk about him in a minute.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say because that's another one where again we saw Audric Harris get on the good and bad side of Kevin Cummings at Tuesday's practice, but again, Keith Reynolds is somebody where if Giles needs a sub out, Keith Reynolds is gonna be the one that probably gets some early playing time just because he's so. I don't want to say electric because it's almost too lazy, but there's just so many things that he can do with the ball in his hands where in this offense, you can line him up as a second running back, kick him out to a wheel route, just get the ball in his hands and he'll make something happen.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about him because you highlighted that it was a really tough grab over the middle that he took and took a big hit afterwards and just popped right back up, which is always fun to see from, a smaller guy playing in the slot when he's able to just take just absorb those big hits and get right back up. And, he's somebody who I've highlighted throughout the course of this. We saw him, getting some work with the punt and the kick returners over the last couple of days as well. And it's for all the reasons that you just said. He is such an electric athlete that you can line him up anywhere. And, I don't want to say that he's a touchdown threat at any time, but he's somebody who, when the ball is in his hands, that he has the ability to break off a big play at any time because he's so shifty. He really is very quick. And, whether you want to line him up in back on a punt return or anything else like that, I wouldn't be surprised if he's the team's starting punt returner by the time fall camp rolls around. And it's just for those reasons where he's just so electric with the ball in his hands. No, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, because that stems with the vision, right? Almost like a similar thing with Daniel Ngata. Why are you having him do your kickoff and punt returns? He's got that vision. When you can kind of teach vision, but you really can't, because especially when you combine Keith's instincts and his vision, that's what's going to make him so dangerous with the ball in his hands. Where he already is thinking 2-3 cuts up the field and two different routes that he can go on a punt return. And so that's why you want those guys back there. Is it's not just a guy who's quick, right? Because you can go throw a 4-3 guy back there if you want to. He's going to get probably blown up and might even not catch the ball. So I think having that maturity to know how to catch the ball as a punt returner, kick returner, and then use your vision, I think that's what's going to separate him, to your point.
So, Lars, I've got one more thing I want to hit on, but I want to see what you've got for me first.
So the other thing, and again, this is a kind of small takeaway, and again, it's not an agenda, right? But one other kind of offensive group that is limited this spring is tight ends. One thing I think I have liked is Quinton Moore. Now, again, most of it's been kind of 7-on, right? And I do want to acknowledge Ryan did practice through the first week of spring ball, did practice today, has gotten some kind of loose reps with the 1s and 2s, wasn't able to finish practice today, but I think that's, again, more just precautionary. He didn't seem bothered by anything. But again, that tight end room, Quinton Moore is clearly an established guy, but they got to find 2 or 3 other options there to make that room actually go. Because Quinton Moore, I think he's honestly kind of become almost like that Devon called pass catcher where, hey, he wasn't necessarily a reliable pass catcher in the past couple of seasons, but now this season he's going to have to be more than just a blocking third option tight end. And we've seen that at least through the four practices in spring ball. I'm more curious, how are they going to supplement that room? Because whether Ryan completes the spring or not, somebody else in that room, and Decker Graff also, I think, worth a shout out as well, has done some good things, made some nice catches. But again, as a true freshman, whether he's blocking or receiving, you need another third tight end, just to, whether it's a 1 or a 2 or a 3, somebody else to help balance out that room. Because again, with the offensive line being in flux, with the receivers working their way through things, that middle of the field, we've seen in practice how much they're targeting the middle of the field. I have to think there's going to be one more body in that room. But overall, I've been pleasantly surprised with the limited reps that we've seen from the tight ends in spring ball.
Yeah, it certainly hasn't been much. And so to your point, I think they'll take 1 in the portal. And I think they're going to, it seems very likely that with some of the visits they're setting up, that they're going to take 2 from the high school recruiting class in 2025. That's how I feel like that's going to shape up with then Quinton Moore leaving after the season. You'll have a very young, but honestly, there's a lot of upside in that group and you can kind of figure it out from there. But the last thing I want to hit on is not an on-field thing. it's just, I really want to talk about just the vibes of some of the guys on this roster, where it feels like there could have been, just a disastrous turn of morale with the allegations of everything we had to open the show with and everything over the last couple of months. But it seems like this team has really come together under Jed Fish and this coaching staff. And it's something where you and I both talked to multiple recruits about this. We've talked to some of the players on the team at different NIL events and things like that. And they just all seem to love the way Jed Fish and his coaching staff have gone about this change. And, they've acknowledged just everything that's happened and said, all right, well, this is the way we're going to do things. And, you kind of see from the way he left at Arizona, I don't know, just the vibes. And I love talking about this just because it's a fun song and it reminds me of the Red Sox when they're playing Sandstorm in the final team period every day, to just the way guys are jumping around, the way guys seem to be having fun, the amount of players we saw staying after practice today that were working for 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes on the field after practice. It just feels like, well, we're not going to go out there and make any insanely bold predictions with this team. It just feels like they're in a really good spot.
I couldn't agree more. And I do think, as you were saying, that part of the reason this team has stuck so well together is because still a decent amount, not a majority like last year and the year before, but CamFab, Carson, there's a number of these guys, Roy, where some of these guys have been through 2-3 coaches, right? So it's not just, hey, this isn't Kalen DeBoer's team that Jed Fish is inheriting. Kalen inherited Jimmy's team, which honestly was inherited by Chris Peterson. And so, there's so many of these guys that have been through so many coaching changes. I remember Carson talked about it, where there's a level of pride that comes with playing for the University of Washington, right? And that's where a lot of these guys stayed for. That's why Jeremiah Hunter came up here. It's why Will Rogers, in part, decided to come out here, right? Not the whole reason, right? But there's a lot of these guys where, hey, it actually means something to play at this school. I didn't just come here for a decent paycheck and some opportunity. I actually want to stay here and finish my legacy, finish the story. And then you couple that with Jed Fish's personality and the way he runs a program, I think it's a perfect fit. Similar but different to what it was like with Kalen DeBoer, right? Where he let the players run the program. I'm sure Jed will, in a similar way, once he gets to know them, will let them run the program. But again, since there isn't as much carryover, he's got to make sure, hey, let me make sure I massage the roster first before I just turn the keys over to you guys.
Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all the invitators for tuning in. We really do appreciate your consistent support. We've got so much more fun stuff coming for you over these next couple of weeks with the draft, with spring practice, with everything else that's going on. So please make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere, updating this channel with new content every single day. So please make sure you hit that like button, subscribe, click that little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave a comment down below. And if you're audio only, please leave us a 5-star review, as it all really does help the show out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we will talk to you on Thursday.